Story 1. I was 7 years old when my mother ran into the room yelling that she hated me and that I had ruined her life. She grabbed my clothes from the dresser and threw them around the room. I am 65 now and have never really forgiven her for it. Story 2. Once, when my mum was drunk, she told me I did not deserve to be loved. It sounded like a sober thought finally escaping her brain. Story 3. When I was 16, my mom cruelly suggested that the ceiling fan would probably break because of my weight if I harmed myself. Story 4. You are not really my friend. You are a boring person, said someone I considered my best friend in 11th grade, who had said I was hers until then. 10 years later, that statement still messes with my head when I approach friendships. At least my therapist said that was a bitch thing to say. Story 5. During my freshman year of college, as a computer science major, my professor pulled me aside toward the end of the first semester and asked, "Have you considered changing majors? I do not think you are cut out for computer science." The professor left the school 2 years later, but those words stuck with me. 4 years after she left, 6 years after she first said it, I graduated with 2 focuses completed: software engineering and video game development. She messaged me on LinkedIn and said, "Congratulations on graduating. I did not think you could do it, and I still do not think you can succeed in this field. You really should have considered something easier." I am a senior engineer now. It has been 9 years since I graduated, but those words still haunt me, especially given how poor the current engineering job market is. Story 6. Overhearing my mother say to my father, "I thought she would stay pretty and thin a lot longer than she has. He is going to cheat. My boyfriend, and where is she going to go? Not home, I hope." I drove 6 hours to visit them, and until then my mother had been my hero. The hurt was unreal. I packed my bags and left without saying anything. I have moved past what she said because she is my only mother and I am her only daughter, but I do not think I will ever truly heal from hearing with my own ears how disappointed she was that I gained a few pounds. Story 7. In secondary school at age 13, a classmate from primary school whom I considered a friend asked me during a break, "Why are you sitting here? Who do you think is your friend here?" I was surprised by the sudden outburst. I was quiet and struggling during the first year of secondary school because of my parents' breakup. I named another friend from primary school whom I thought was my best friend, but they did not respond. That was the moment I broke and began walking through the hallways by myself during breaks for almost a year and a half. Eventually, I found my way to the library, where a group of outcasts hung out every break, although I did not realize it immediately. Story 8. My boss called me into his office one morning and was very excited to tell me the general manager's son was coming in and that she wanted him to shadow me for the day. The son had expressed interest in a career doing what I do. My boss made it sound like a great opportunity for me. It turned out the general manager had handpicked me because she was trying to discourage her son from doing what I did for a living. Neither of those 2 arrogant managers understood how insulting that was. I was shocked. The son shadowed me all day, and I made sure he had a great time and understood how rewarding my career has been. He had the time of his life. Story 9. A teacher said it was understandable that I was bullied because I was an odd child. Story 10. You're acting like your father right now. It's the only time I have ever come to an instant full stop, shut down, left the house, and started driving with no destination in mind. Story 11. My ill mother tells me I am mean and that I should be nicer like my sister. Considering that I am the one cleaning the various bodily fluids my mother spills around the house every day, while my sister never helps because she is too busy sleeping with married men and going on vacation with money she stole from my mother, I take it as a spit in the face. Story 12. You ruined my relationship. My mother's reaction to her husband assaulting me at the age of 8. I am still a broken woman. Story 13. I broke up with my then 3-year-old's mother and moved into a bedroom at my sister's. At mediation, my ex asked where my daughter sleeps when she comes to stay. I said she sleeps with me. She then asked what it looks like when a 43-year-old man is sleeping with a 3-year-old girl. I walked out. I was not going to be dragged down to her level and have her use her experience against me. Story 14. Don't bother killing yourself because I'm going to kill you. my father said to me after my dog ate my chocolate Easter bunny. I was 10 and had made my first suicide attempt not even a month earlier. May he rot in hell. Story 15. My friend said to me when we saw my then-boyfriend's ex-girlfriend inside a cafe, "Sorry to say, she's prettier than you." That hurt, but I didn't believe her. Story 16. I have a naturally round face. My grandmother called me fat face, and my father's second wife used to make fun of me. I am still conscious of this. Story 17. While shopping at Costco, I walked past two people pushing a cart in the opposite direction. They looked directly at me. One spoke to the other in Spanish and started laughing. I speak Spanish. They said something like, "My God, I can't believe they let the Walmart shoppers in here now. I know I'm very unattractive and I have heard it all before, but that one stung more." Story 18. My mother told me I was so much like my father while she was divorcing him. Story 19. Someone I used to work with in retail who was pursuing a doctor of philosophy told me I did not have the required intelligence to pursue one over a trivial matter at work. I have not started a doctor of philosophy, but I am now a full-time lecturer at the university we both attend, while she is still working on hers. Story 20. Someone told me that I was just going to kill myself. He was aware of my extensive history of depression. I punched him in the mouth. That was the only time I have ever answered words with physical violence. There is more to that story. He had been harassing me for months and I lost control. Story 21. Someone once told me I'd never be successful because I wasn't special enough. It stung, but it also lit a fire under me to prove them wrong. Story 22. When I was a teenager, my mom said, "I don't know why I had you." Story 23. When I finally asked my mother why she started spoiling my brother, who is 3 years younger, when I turned 18, she said, "Because I do not want your brother to grow up to be a wreck like you." She never told me, "I love you." She allowed her husband to beat me for 7 years while acting as if it were completely normal. Story 24. People like you would have been lined up against a wall and shot back in the day. We should finally make him kill himself. Story 25. You get your looks from your mother's side despite the inbreeding. Story 26. People asked me, "Aren't you tired of feeling this way? It's been a year. Shouldn't you get over it?" These comments came after my uncle murdered my brother. It has been 20 years. I will never fully get over it, and I did not choose to feel this way. It is sad how often people are clueless and ignorant about post-traumatic stress disorder. Story 27. If you were in a video game, you would drop common loot. It took me back. I still have not fully recovered. Story 28. My mom asked why I didn't do it right after she saw the multiple cuts on my arm. Story 29. My mom called me a sin, and 5 years later she told me to my face that I'm her least favorite. Story 30. You looked better before pregnancy, said my husband when our son was about 2 weeks old. Story 31. It was an insult created because I was a quiet, shy child with a low voice. This happened in middle school when I was about 13 or 14. 2 girls I was friends with made up the insult during science class and got others to join in and bully me. Story 32. Your mother abandoned you because you are a freak. I was born with hydrocephalus. Story 33. My mom told me how fat I looked while I was getting dressed for my grandpa's funeral. It was not the first or the last time she said that, but it hurt that she could not go easy on her child in that situation. Story 34. Abusive boyfriend. Your mom's probably glad she got cancer and passed so she didn't have to be around you anymore. She was a single mom my whole life and passed when I was 15. I'll never forget those words. Story 35. When I was about 11 or 12, my dad angrily declared that I was fucking useless because I couldn't find a screwdriver. My mother liked to say that I should be more like my brother, as if that were a magical incantation that would transfer some of his discipline into me. Instead, it made me depressed, which made it harder to concentrate, leading to more trouble, more berating, deeper depression, and a repeating cycle. It is strange that I was bullied by most of my classmates throughout school, and even into university and my first job, until I finally put on some size and began to stand my ground. Hundreds of people picked on me for any and every reason over those years. Those insults still stand out as I approach 40. Story 36. He repeatedly used the old line, "Hey, do you have any pretty friends I could date?" "No, not you, because we're friends." Story 37. I should preface this. I started balding very early. I was mocked and received sniping comments from the end of high school through college and the first few years of my career. I was otherwise satisfied with my appearance, but years of insults about something I could not control took their toll. I became fairly muscular during the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic and finally felt I looked okay. In 2022, when things reopened, I attended an anime convention at a water park. I was cosplaying and took off my wig to go on the water slides. A man turned to me and said I should keep it on. Story 38. When I was growing up, my parents made me feel like I was very annoying, overly emotional, and too much. They treated me as an annoyance and a burden. That belief stayed with me for over 30 years and made me believe deep down that was all I was. As an adult, I was diagnosed with autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. My ex looked me in the eye and said, "You really are unbearable to be around." That has stuck with me more than anything I have ever heard. Story 39. I fell in the shower when I was 8 months pregnant and yelled for my husband. He looked disgusted. He said I was lucky to have him because I am fat and ugly and no one else would ever want me. He was wrong, but I still feel that 40 years later. Story 40. My father said, "You are going to be barefoot and pregnant, just like your mother." He was 17 when he impregnated my mother, who was 15 years old. This happened when I was 13. Story 41. A stranger called my husband a racial slur, and it hurt on multiple levels. It still gets to me. Story 42. When I was a teenager, a friend said to me, "You shouldn't go out. You make our city look ugly." Story 43. Everyone knows that if you were a dog, you would be a Chihuahua. That is why you get along with them so well. Story 44. My ex, a friend with benefits, told me you have nothing to offer a woman. She was probably right. I stay single by choice, but it still stings. Story 45. Almost everything my ex-mother-in-law ever said to me was horrible and jealous. The latest was my children don't love me. She is 90. Story 46. I had an uncle with Down syndrome. My ex-wife said, "Did you ever think maybe you have some of those genes?" Story 47. When I told my art teacher that I was applying to transfer to an art-centered high school, she said it was a waste of time and that I clearly did not have the skills to succeed, let alone get into a different school. Art had been my entire life at that point, and I could not imagine doing anything else. Every free moment was spent drawing or painting. I had won awards. The joke was on her. I got into that art high school and then every art school I applied to after graduation. 20 years later, I make a passable living solely from my art. Looking back, she was probably just a sad woman who was angry that her own art never amounted to anything. It still stings sometimes. Story 48. At the young age of 30, I had been sick and trying to figure out what was wrong for a while. It was well known. The entire previous year I spent getting tests at multiple hospitals. I was at my mother's house. We had a complicated relationship. I told her how scared I was because the word cancer was starting to be used and I was being referred to a hematologist, a blood specialist. I was exhausted, feeling defeated, and angry that I was facing this at such a young age despite taking good care of myself. She responded, "How do you think I feel? I have to go through a divorce because your father decided to leave me, right? The man you mistreated, controlled, and bullied incessantly for the last 20 years of your 35-year marriage finally decided he would leave instead of taking his own life because he had been thinking about it. But go on. Tell me how that is worse than your child dying." That day proved to me that this woman would never be able to feel true compassion. That was the day I decided I was out. It has been 3 glorious years of being motherless, and it has been so worth it. Story 49. You cannot love your stepchildren. They are not yours. Yeah, I am adopted. Story 50. My 4-year-old daughter said while I was changing my shirt, "Oh, Dad, you have boobs like Mom, but yours are small. I've always been self-conscious about my figure. Story 51. It wasn't people's words that hurt the most, but their actions, the true insults that still betray my trust. Story 52. I was once told I was unplanned and that my father was not happy when my mother was pregnant with me. Still, he was a great father to me, and I would never have known until someone told me after he passed away. I asked my mother, and she admitted it was true. Thank you to my estranged brother, whom I no longer speak to. Story 53. When I was about 12, my dad was drunk and he told me to eat shit and die. That always sticks with me, even though our relationship is okay. Story 54. I attended a school music concert and was in the audience. I was looking forward to seeing my younger brother play. As he came on stage, someone said that he was more talented than I would ever be. That comment stuck with me. I was 15 at the time. I am 30 now. Story 55. It will not matter if acid is thrown on your face. You will still look the same. Story 56. I thought my mother must have been really ugly. She had recently died. I wanted to go out. It ruined me for a few months. Story 57. Someone once told me I reeked of desperation. That became a turning point in my life when I stopped reaching out, showing any vulnerability, or being visible. To this day, I do not speak to others unless spoken to. Story 58. My mother-in-law used to body shame me, commenting on my thighs in front of everyone. Story 59. My step-grandmother told me when I was 7 that I was going to be a priest because there is no other use for bastard children. It took me a while to realize how casually insulting she had been, since I did not even know what the word meant. That was 45 years ago. She is still alive because hell will not take her. Story 60. You are a disgrace to your family, my teacher said after catching me talking in class when I was 9. Story 61. You are fucked in the head. You will not end up with any friends if you continue to be negative. They do not like you. Someone told a friend I was suicidal, and the friend yelled at me and said I was weak. My parents told me that I had put on too much weight. When will I stop taking steroids? When I lost weight, my ex told me I looked like I had cancer. You are coddled and spoiled. A support worker told me I am probably a burden to my parents. My mother said that in the last years of her life, she does not want to deal with my mental health. There is more, but I do not want to think about it. People are cruel, and it has made me angrier and more bitter because of the way I have been treated. Story 62. A friend of mine at work told me in front of everyone, "You don't live life. You live like a sim." It was a great fucking insult. Couldn't get mad. Story 63. Honestly, a simple comment that I smelled bad messed with my brain and destroyed the confidence I was slowly rebuilding. It affected me so much that even 20 years later, if I notice an unpleasant smell, I assume it is me until I find the source. Story 64. My parents said that someone had told them that if I lost weight, I would be pretty. I was 14 to 15 years old, athletic, and not overweight. Story 65. I wish I had aborted you. Go abort yourself. While trying to give me a weapon to kill myself. Story 66. At the tail end of a 5-year relationship, she said that she did not listen to a word I said. That haunts me years later. Story 67. What happened to you? They hadn't seen me in a while and I had gained some weight. Story 68. At a couple's party, after some alcohol, we played Strip Truth or Dare. I lost and overheard one woman tell my wife that I have a small penis. I gave my wife credit. She defended me and said I was plenty big for her. Story 69. I'm a trans man. When I told my family, my sister said, "You killed my sister." I said, "I'm still here and I'm the same person inside." Later I found out they make jokes and talk about me at family functions when I'm not there. I now have no birth family. Only my wife and our adopted daughter who love and accept me. Story 70. When I was 18, I got in a fight with a close friend, and in the heat of the moment they yelled in my face, "I am glad your dad died." 6 months earlier, my dad had been struck by a car while walking home and died instantly. I have not been friends with that person since. I cannot bring myself to forgive them. Story 71. I'm constantly being ghosted by friends and family. Story 72. After I discovered my husband was having an affair, I cried and asked, "Why would you do this?" He looked at me expressionless and said in a matter-of-fact tone, "She is more fun than you." Then he walked away. Story 73. My boyfriend took me on holiday with him 4 years ago, and we had a great time. We did some random things, as we always do, and his mother said, "Oh, don't mind them, they're just autistic." She wasn't trying to be mean. She was just trying to explain and realized her mistake. I guess I felt offended because I was being stereotyped. We enjoyed the rest of the holiday. It was one of my favorite holidays I've ever been on. Story 74. I spent ages cooking a complex meal for my 8-year-old autistic son. How is the food? It is what it is. Story 75. A few months after ending a 6-year relationship, my abusive ex-husband texted me that he never really loved me. He just didn't want to be alone. That was the moment my heart turned into a black hole. Story 76. It may not seem like much, but I started running in 2014. I ran 2 slow marathons and at one point was running 3 to 5 miles a day at about a 10-minute mile pace. My fiancée, who was my girlfriend at the time, knew a few men she worked with who were fitness fanatics. In a conversation, one of them asked whether my boyfriend was running the Boston Marathon. She replied that I wasn't really a runner, that I just ran for exercise. It wasn't meant as an insult, but it hurt to hear. 7 years later, I still feel the sting, and I continue to run 3 to 5 miles a day. Story 77. You are not as smart as you think you are. It stung because it made me question my own confidence. Story 78. You are ugly. Granted, it was 5th or 6th grade, but it kinda stings a bit. Story 79. My parents were not drinkers or drug users. They were verbally abusive. Do parents say and do dumb things in the heat of the moment? Sure, I will give them that. But some people never stop abusing and refuse to acknowledge their actions, like my parents. My dad gave me hell as a kid and is still a jerk all these years later. My 2 younger sisters have not had a relationship with him for well over 20 years. I quit keeping track. I stuck it out with him because I thought it would get better. It did not. It just changed. I am 49 and still working through my issues. It is part of why I am single. It is hard to have a good relationship when your brain is messed up about things. Even with therapy, I am not fully healed. But I am 1,000 times better than I used to be. I could list a lot of hurtful things they both said, but I will not. You get the picture. Story 80. My darling birth giver once told me it was my fault that she and my dad were splitting up. She had been cheating on him for years. Story 81. I am finally in a clinic after years of outpatient therapy and on medications. I have been struggling with severe depression while coping with the deaths of family members and burnout. A former friend who has known me for decades canceled a birthday party he had promised to help me with for a mutual friend because he had a date. I only found out after calling him several times and wondering where he was. He said, "You obviously have borderline personality disorder, so I will go away to protect myself from you. Over the past years, you have damaged me irreparably. You are sick, crazy, and in need of help. Thanks, bro." Story 82. When I was younger, someone called me ugly to my face and made gagging noises. That wasn't very nice. Story 83. I am a refrigerator. I had no idea what it meant, which made everyone laugh. I laughed out loud. The teacher had to explain it to me to stop my meltdown. Story 84. A girl I like said I was too boring to date. Yeah, that still hurts 6 years later. Story 85. An ex of mine told me that my heart is as black as my skin. Story 86. My mom told me she was ashamed to call me her daughter when I was having a music lesson on Zoom. I found the hellos and goodbyes awkward and was never sure what to do. I was 11 at the time. She apologized many hours later but never denied it. Story 87. I don't know if I actually love you or if it's just convenient. Story 88. As a man, I told someone I was the caregiver for my children, and the person I was speaking to stopped mid-sentence and turned away, as if I had vanished before their eyes. Story 89. Nothing as extreme as some others here, but way back when I was bullied in school a lot. When I told my mom about the situation, she said she was worried I was going to end up shooting up the school. What the fuck was that? I already felt weird, out of place, and uncomfortable in my own skin, and suddenly my mom implied she believed I could do something like Columbine at age 13. It took me about a decade to recover my self-esteem after middle school and that statement. Story 90. You are not even worth the time it takes to ignore you. My ex. Story 91. My mom and sister spent my whole childhood telling me I had no friends and that nobody wanted to be around me. When I was 17, my mom and I did not get along, and my dad told me I was upsetting her and that if it came down to me or her, he would choose her. I am almost 29 now, and I hear them saying it in my head all the time. Story 92. I've been hearing, I bet you were beautiful when you were young, for 10 years. Thanks. Keep it to yourself. Story 93. I went to a salad bar with a friend who wanted it for lunch. As we reached the counter and she decided, the man behind the counter said to me, I think you should get the salad. Not her. I am plus size, but I try to live my life without being a nuisance to anyone. I make myself smaller in public, staying quiet and essentially non-existent. People can be so mean. I have never felt more humiliated. I ran from the place, got into my car, and drove home in tears. This happened almost 10 years ago, but I still remember the feeling and choke up when I think about it. Story 94. I was told that because I'm tattooed, pierced, child-free, fat, and ugly, I am a low-level woman, and the fact that I'm white only saves me from being completely worthless. They then said they were not going to tell me to kill myself because I would suffer more alive, and that if I am in a relationship, I am just a piece of meat with an expiration date to them. If you are thinking about harming yourself, contact emergency services or a crisis line right now. In the United States, call or text 988. If you are outside the United States, contact local emergency services or your country's suicide prevention hotline. If you want, I can help find local resources. Story 95. My last ex said, loving you is exhausting, and it still sticks with me. Story 96. To everyone who posted here, you were not wrong. The fault lies with them, not you. Hurtful words come from people who are hurt themselves. You were simply their target. You are not defined by what others think of you, but by what you think of yourself. I am sorry you were hurt by hateful, bitter people. You deserve better, and you are more capable and powerful than you know. I wish each of you the best, and may you find peace and happiness in your days. Be kind. Story 97. Your mother was a hamster and your father smelled like elderberries. Story 98. You deserved to be raped. My ex said this to me after I shared that I was sexually assaulted. What made it worse was that he was also a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. Story 99. Girls are supposed to be pretty or smart. You are neither. Story 100. My mother once told me, everything is not for everybody, meaning the outfit I wanted would not look good on me. She bought it for my little sister instead. Story 101. At their core, the worst insults are those that could be true about you but are actually projections of the transgressor's worthlessness. By identifying perceived worthlessness in you, they gain a momentary relief. I had a horrible falling out with my best friend and roommate. It culminated in his desperate attempt to keep me as his main source of that relief. I was trying to tie up loose ends during my move out, and in hysterical anger he called me a narcissist. That moment makes you despair over having been in such an exploitative arrangement for so long. At the end, while escaping the abuse, you realize there was never any real mutual bond. You were propping him up. He knew it, you did not. It is like the myth of Daedalus and Icarus, a concise story about banal evil and a profound form of the tragedy of the commons. Story 102. My father told me I was just like my mother. My mother is the exact opposite of the person I am trying to be. It hurt really badly. Story 103. Any insult directed at my appearance really hurts me. Story 104. Everyone deserves love and kindness. Honestly, it should be a human right. Story 105. My sister told me to jump off a bridge 3 times and said that if I died, her life would not change. Story 106. My boyfriend did not tell me I was a good person when I asked him after a really horrible day. I had been taken advantage of at work, and a friend had taken out their anger from their personal life on me. It was a terrible day. I do not cry often, but I cried all the way home to our apartment because I was too tired to stop. When I got home in tears, he just sat on the couch without responding or flinching. This had sadly become normal for me. I asked him if I was a good person. On the walk home, my mind was attacking me, telling me how awful I was, how delusional to think I made a difference in life, and that maybe I was the narcissist after all. I wanted to break that cycle of thoughts. He said he could not say. When I asked why, he said he could not say, he just did not think I was. Tears streamed down my face and my heart broke. I felt utterly broken and everything went cold. Even my boyfriend, who lives with me, who says he loves me, who knows what I do for others and goes out of my way to look after people including him, why would he date someone who was not a good person? Did he even love me? I isolated myself after that and nearly killed myself that night. It is not his fault if I had, but I was so distraught that someone so close to me, who should know me best, could not say I was a good person for no good reason. He was verbally and physically abusive during my panic attacks. He often choked me. He also did other things, but that is not relevant here. I am very happy to be free. I am also much more mentally stable now. My self-worth will never be dangled in front of a partner again, even when I need to hear it the most. I still do not understand how someone who says they love you can stand in front of you while you are having a really awful day and not go and hug you or remind you why they love you. I wish I had known I deserved that then. To anyone reading this, you deserve that too. Story 107. While going through an extremely stressful time at work, I broke down to my boss and told him I really needed help with a few things. He said, "Give it to Mandy. She is mentally stronger and can handle this." Felt like someone slapped me. The kicker was that I needed help because I had no idea what to do. I was not given adequate training. I cried but chose to forgive him because we were all stressed to the max at that point. Story 108. Being associated with my brother has been difficult. He is an absolute piece of shit, which I did not fully appreciate until I was older. He was always a jerk when we were younger, but now he is an abhorrent buffalo turd. Story 109. In third grade, a classmate squeezed behind me. The teacher told him to wash his hands quickly because he had touched me. Story 110. I was over at a friend's house when his alcoholic father told him he would end up in prison someday. We were 9 years old. The sad thing is my friend became a drug addict and went to jail several times. I had to cut contact with him because of his instability. I blame both of his parents for never caring. Story 111. My life is worse for having known you. I'm still recovering from that. He was so mad when I ended the relationship a month later. Story 112. When I was 8 or 9, I was on holiday with my mother and her friend. We had been at the pool and I was very attached to my teddies, so I took them everywhere. As we packed up, my mother asked me where my teddies were, and I had no idea. We frantically searched the resort, thinking I had misplaced them. As we stood in front of the hotel lobby, my mother began to rant, calling me careless and stupid. What stuck with me was her saying, "I wish I never had you." It hurt because I was not a planned child. She did not know she was pregnant with me until 6 months into the pregnancy. As it turned out, my mother had taken my teddies up to the hotel room earlier and forgotten them. She had tucked them into the bed. Story 113. I remember my father looking me right in the eyes and telling me that he never loved me. I was 9 years old. Story 114. I woke up one morning to my girlfriend at the time waiting for me with her things packed. She told me she did not really love me and had been using me for a place to stay. She had been my best friend before we were together, so it felt like multiple levels of loss and betrayal. Story 115. Not nearly as serious as some of the others, but I remember a friend in high school once said, "You know, the only reason you're making good grades is because your mom works at the school." He was basically insinuating that my mom influenced the teachers to give me good grades. Took me utterly by surprise. It did not hurt much at the time, but over the years I have realized how awful that was to say to someone, especially a good friend. I was a massive underachiever in my first 2 years of high school. For my last 2 years, I worked really hard to raise my grades so I would at least have a shot at a good college. It was the first time I had ever tried at something that did not come naturally to me. I earned all A's in those years and was able to get into a decent school as a result. I did not even realize he cared about grades at all, but it must have hurt his pride or something. Had he known my mom well, he would have known that, if anything, her working there made it harder to get good grades. Story 116. I was talking to a man I met online some years ago, and we had arranged to meet. I went to the agreed place and waited. I finally realized he was not coming and went home. Later I messaged him and asked what had happened. His reply was, "Nobody loves a fat girl. Fuck that guy." Story 117. You would be so much prettier if you were skinny, my mother told me when I was about 12 years old. Story 118. Someone once told me I was like a cloud. When I disappear, it is a beautiful day. I am still working on my comeback for that one. Story 119. I was a victim of bullying during a summer camp. Some days later, I was on vacation with my family and friends, and I would always be by myself reading a book because I was a very shy and introverted kid. One day my dad came to me and said, "No wonder they bullied you." I was 11. Story 120. Gaze, sort, humorous, aspiring, late, oatmeal, sink, market, cause, paint. Story 121. My mum once said that she wished I had never been born, which stung for a while and still does, if I'm honest. My dad also excels at causing maximum damage with small jabs. Story 122. A rehab physiotherapist said this to me after a 6-week hospital stay and 2 abdominal surgeries that left me with a stomach pooch. For someone who looks like that, you have a stronger core than I would have guessed. That one still hurts. As if I don't feel terrible enough about my body. Story 123. My mother told me I was the reason my son had autism. She has also called me a bad mother, and I give it right back to her. You can insult me, call me names, attack me verbally and even physically, but do not ever call me a bad mother. I am not a perfect mother, but I am a goddamn good mother. I take pride in being a mother. She is the epitome of a narcissist and an alcoholic. She knows I am a good mother, a better mother than she was, is, or ever will be, and sadly that bothers her. There is only one person in this world whose opinion of me as a mother matters, and that is my son. Story 124. No one likes you. Not me, not Allison, his wife, not the kids, my half-siblings, not Nana. I was 10 and this came from my dad. It still stings 20 years later. Story 125. If you are thinking of killing yourself, do me a favor and do it somewhere else so I do not have to deal with it. Thanks. My dad said this when I was 16. We were not even having a conversation, he just opened with that. Story 126. A grade 9 boy told my abuser that she was so gross, and that he could not believe he had ever touched her, while we were in 9th grade. I promptly slapped the boy and received 2 days of detention for it. Worth it. Story 127. I had a lecturer at college who said to me, "The rest of the class should be thankful that you're here. You're bumping up the rest of their grades because yours is so bad." She also tried to teach me things that were just wrong, and I knew it. We studied environmental and land-based studies with a main focus on animal care, and she told me about her run-in with a baboon who towered over her and was about 6 feet tall. What the fuck, Allison? I opted for a college course because I couldn't focus in the classroom because of undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. My lack of attention isn't an indicator that I'm a moron. I stopped trying at all until the very end, when I completed the entire year's worth of work in around 2 weeks and got the equivalent of an A. My math teacher also said harsh things about my ability to pass, and I got an A in that class too. Story 128. Someone said they don't think of me as biracial and that I just seem normal and white to them. Fucking hell. That saddened me this year. It's 2024. Story 129. My sister told me that I look like Kevin from The Office. I am a girl. Story 130. My daughter was being a little shit once, and I jokingly told her that she had made God cry. She was absolutely devastated. Took a while to calm her down. I now avoid that phrase. Story 131. Not words, but actions. A former friend, whom I'll call Sam, and I used to do many things together, especially Forex strategy gaming. I admit I was never very good. I made choices that were cool and thematic, or that were sensible and showed integrity and care for my people, not choices that were mechanically optimal and ruthlessly exploitative. Sam was always the play-to-win type, and they almost always won. One day we were playing Master of Orion 2, and, as usual, Sam set up the game, editing the map file so it would be supercharged the way we liked. They curb-stomped me, obliterating my empire in about 100 turns, which, for anyone not familiar with Master of Orion 2, is a very fast game when you are not actively trying to sprint to the finish. It turned out they had cheated, giving themselves the best leader in the game, normally completely inaccessible early and extremely rare even late. They also gave themselves a better home system than mine. Coming clean about this meant admitting to past cheating as well. Basically, any time I started getting better, they cheated more to keep themselves ahead, despite, or more likely because of, their desire to make things competitive and have minor prizes for victory. Even though it was objectively true that they were better at the games than I was, Sam still chose to cheat to preserve any advantage. That pretty much ended our friendship. I had already begun feeling less connected to Sam because of other behaviors they showed that were not particularly great. But this was a horrible slap in the face. Years of our interactions suddenly felt filled with suspicion and made me angry to think about. The one thing we had never stopped doing, gaming, was now tainted, probably beyond repair. Story 132. You have a caveman tear slouch. I hate League of Legends. Story 133. I was called demonic for being bisexual. Anyway, how's your day going? Story 134. I cannot say I am surprised, but I am disappointed. My grandmother was upset that my girlfriend at the time was pregnant. Story 135. One of my girlfriends said, "Just fuck off. I have never and will never love you. I hate you." Story 136. If the good die young, we will live forever. It was supposed to be a compliment and reassurance. Story 137. One semester in college, I was invited to a coworker's house for a get-together. He told me my crush would be there. I tried to approach her, and she said, "You know, you're light-skinned gone wrong." Story 138. You are fit for work. I am comedically far from fit for work, and the later overturned decision nearly killed me. Story 139. I used to like the Red Hot Chili Peppers until I met you. They're my favorite band, but I'm not a crazy fan. The most I owned was a single shirt. I rarely talked about them. I played their music often while driving, and they made me happy on days when I wasn't. Story 140. I work in customer service, and I will never forget one call. Apparently, I was not being helpful at all. So the woman on the other end asked, "Can I speak to someone of my own species, please?" That one hurt. Story 141. It's a toss-up. An ex told me, "I want to have kids, just not with you," which hurt after our breakup. My dad said a lot of really hurtful things, name-calling and basically calling me a failure who would never amount to anything. Right before my wedding. That's probably the worst. Honorable mention, and ironically linked to the other two, was my mom saying, "Oh my God, you were just like your father," when I told her about that breakup. Story 142. Don't come near me. You're filthy. You're mud. My mother, when I was 6. To be fair to her, I had somehow broken into the chair storage under the stage of a hall. The staff had forgotten to lock it, and I was crawling under the chairs pretending I was caving. When the staff realized and pulled me out, I was covered from head to toe with dust. I tried to hug my mother so she would not scold me. It is a fond and funny shared memory now, but back then it hurt. Story 143. If I had to choose between you and my dogs, I would pick my dogs, my drunk mother said. Another hurtful time was when I was pregnant and my husband's coworker told him that our baby would be born disabled because I am thin. Story 144. When I was a young man, a young woman I really liked looked at me and said, "I can't view you as a sexual being at all." 40 years later, that still stings. Story 145. Someone I considered a best friend told me to kill myself and said he would have killed himself if he were me. It also hurt when a friend said I am nothing compared to some random guy. I do not remember the whole conversation, but it hurt nonetheless. I have terrible friends. Story 146. This one is probably not just the most hurtful but also the most helpful. I was in Target picking up groceries and was probably going to grab some snacks too. I was feeling good and having a good day when a man, with his wife and little daughter, bent down to the child, pointed at me and loudly said, "Look at how fat that guy is." Immediately the smile left my face. He was right, so I just grabbed basic stuff, no food, and left. I was infuriated, but what really stuck with me was the way his poor wife looked trapped, miserable, and ashamed to be with him. It seemed to hurt her more than it hurt me. What really got me was the thought that this guy has a family that probably despises him and is a total piece of shit but could probably kick my fat ass. I had gained a bunch of weight during the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic. After my dad, my dog, my uncle, and my grandma died, so it really stuck with me that I missed the opportunity to beat the absolute shit out of this guy in front of his family like I could have when I used to train. Anyway, I went home and started a basic workout routine of push-ups and squats, basically lying on the ground and getting up. I'd done it before and I'd do it again. Now, a bit over a year later, I'm down 100 pounds of fat, went from doing 3 push-ups a set to 33, and today I'm going to the gym to start my 3rd week of the 5-3-1 program. I'm fucking psyched because it's overhead presses. So if I ever see that guy, I'm going to thank him right after I knock all of his teeth out in front of his wife and kid, and then I'm going to ask her if she needs help getting out of an abusive situation. Story 147. My ex-best friend's girlfriend at the time, who may have been autistic, told me at another friend's party that I did not deserve to be happy. She said it to my face, totally unprovoked. It was a couple of years ago, but it still hurts as if it were said yesterday. Story 148. You look like Whoopi Goldberg, but with eyebrows. I wish I'd swung on her for that one. I was in my 1st year of university. After reading some of the replies, I think I should have kept this to myself. Story 149. My mother said that if it came down to it, she would choose him over us. She was referring to my stepfather. I don't remember the context, but I will never forget that statement. Story 150. The most hurtful insult I ever received was not even meant to be malicious. It was more of an offhand comment. Someone close to me once said, "You're so forgettable." It happened during an argument. They did not say it to be cruel. It just slipped out. That stuck with me. It made me question my presence, my personality, and whether I left an impact on the people around me. It felt like being told, "You don't matter," but in a quieter, more insidious way. Over time, I realized it was not entirely true and was probably said out of frustration, but it still haunts me sometimes. It has made me more intentional about how I show up in people's lives, not to prove them wrong, but to make sure the people I care about never feel that way about themselves. Story 151. I tell myself that no one has ever wanted and will ever want an almost 30-year-old, fat, ugly, sad person with parental issues, sexual trauma, herpes simplex virus, and cancer. It doesn't matter how hard I work on bettering myself, losing weight, going to therapy, and investing in hobbies and self-care, I will always be an insecure washout with no prospects. But that's just me telling myself that on a daily basis. A close second is being told by my dad that I am almost 30 and a fat loser who is using cancer as an excuse to be lazy. Story 152. At the end of 6th grade, several people told me they had only been pretending to be my friends all year. I was genuinely blindsided, and it gave me trust issues for many years afterward. It may sound foolish now, even to me as I type it, but it hurt. Story 153. My siblings call me a martyr because I am my mother's caregiver and sometimes have to remind them of all I do for her. She is 87. They do not see or talk to her except on holidays. I would be okay if they called me bitter, because that is what I truly am, but not a martyr. Story 154. My aunt said very calmly, not during an argument, that nobody would ever want or love me. Story 155. You are mind-numbingly boring to be with. I dread coming home every day. You look old and cakey. All in the space of about 5 minutes, laughing out loud. Story 156. I was talking to a couple of girls I thought were my friends in 4th or 5th grade, when one of them turned to me and said, laughing out loud, "You're more like an acquaintance than a friend." I looked it up in a dictionary and instantly felt terrible and confused about what I had done wrong or whether I was not enough. It was the first time I had heard the term, but her words stuck with me and made me forever self-conscious and hyper-aware of my place in friendships and social circles. It did not help that I was already considered the weird kid in school. Story 157. I don't grow much facial hair. I was working a shutdown at a steel mill, 7 days a week on 12-hour shifts. I skipped shaving for a month, so my peach fuzz started getting long in the few places it grows. A coworker said I looked like an Amish grandmother. It hurt because it was true. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.